the sprawling corridors of a grand mansion, hidden beneath layers of opulence and wealth, a secret door lay concealed for decades. Isabella Whitmore, the sharp and curious daughter of one of the world's wealthiest billionaires, stumbled upon it by accident. But what lay behind the door wasn't just a hidden chamber. It was a family secret so powerful that it threatened to unravel the legacy her family had built for generations. What would she uncover, and how would it change her world forever? The Whitmore Mansion, a sprawling estate nestled in the rolling hills of Connecticut, was the epitome of old money. It was a place where every inch seemed to whisper stories of privilege and grandeur. The ornate chandeliers, the velvet drapes, and the marble floors glistened under the sunlight that poured in through colossal French windows. But for all its splendor, the house carried an air of mystery, as though its walls held secrets that even its inhabitants had forgotten. Isabella Whitmore, 24, was the youngest daughter of real estate mogul Arthur Whitmore. Despite her privileged upbringing, Isabella had always been the curious one in the family. While her siblings, Andrew and Eloise, thrived in the family business and lived their lives under the spotlight, Isabella preferred the quiet solace of the mansion's vast library or the hidden nooks of its gardens. She was sharp, observant, and unafraid to question the world around her. Unlike her father, who was reserved and often preoccupied with his work, Isabella had a fiery spirit. She was driven not by material wealth, but by her unquenchable thirst for understanding the past. Her late mother, Charlotte, had once said, "Every family has its secrets, Isabella. Some are better left buried." That cryptic line, uttered years ago, had never left her mind. The staff, though loyal, avoided certain areas of the mansion, whispering about strange noises or unexplained cold drafts. Isabella dismissed their superstitions as folklore. After all, a house of this size was bound to have quirks. But it wasn't until she returned home after graduating from university that her curiosity turned into an obsession. One rainy afternoon, Isabella was wandering the west wing of the mansion, a section she hadn't explored much as a child. The corridors were darker here, and the air seemed cooler, carrying the faint scent of aged wood and damp stone. As her hand brushed against the wall, she felt an unusual ridge beneath the ornate wallpaper. Peeling it back, she revealed a small, antique keyhole. She froze. Why would there be a locked door here, hidden so meticulously behind the wallpaper? Isabella's heart raced. Could this be one of the secrets her mother had hinted at? The question burned in her mind, and she knew she had to find the key to unlock the truth. Determined, she set off to search the mansion for the key, unaware that what lay behind the door would force her to confront the darkest chapters of her family's history and change her perspective on the life she had always known. Rising action. Isabella's discovery of the hidden door set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. After finding the concealed keyhole, her days became consumed with the search for answers. She combed through the vast library, scoured the attic, and interrogated the mansion staff, each interaction uncovering new layers of intrigue and conflict. One evening, as Isabella rifled through her mother's personal belongings in the attic, she stumbled upon an old, dusty journal tucked inside a chest. The journal belonged to Charlotte, her late mother, and its yellowed pages held cryptic entries about the mansion's construction. One particular passage caught her eye. Arthur insisted on building the West Wing himself. There's a room he visits often, claiming it's for quiet reflection. I've asked about it, but he brushes me off. Something about it feels off. I worry what he's keeping in there. Isabella's fingers trembled as she read the words. Her father, known for his stoic demeanor, had never spoken of any quiet reflection room. Why would he have kept this a secret, even from his wife? It wasn't long before suspicion began to cloud her thoughts. Was her father hiding something that could harm the family's reputation? Her discovery stirred unease within her. Over dinner one evening, Isabella decided to confront her family. Arthur sat at the head of the table, flanked by Andrew and Eloise, who were chatting about the latest developments in the family business. "Dad, what's in the West Wing?" Isabella asked abruptly, her voice cutting through the chatter. The room fell silent. Arthur froze mid-bite, his fork hovering above his plate. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his tone sharp. "There's a hidden door. I found it the other day," Isabella replied, studying his reaction closely. She noticed the flicker of panic in his eyes, a fleeting moment that confirmed her suspicions. "It's nothing," Arthur said quickly, waving his hand dismissively. "Just an old storage room." "Then why was it hidden?" she pressed, her voice rising. "And why did Mom write about it in her journal? She thought you were hiding something." Andrew and Eloise exchanged nervous glances. "Isabella, stop," Eloise said firmly. "You're overthinking this. Dad wouldn't—" "I'm not overthinking anything," Isabella snapped. "Mom knew something wasn't right, and I want to know the truth." Arthur's face darkened. "Drop it, Isabella," he said, his voice low and commanding. "Some doors are better left closed." Her father's warning only fueled her determination. That night, Isabella confided in Eloise, hoping her sister might support her. But Eloise's response was far from what she expected. "Why can't you just leave it alone?" Eloise hissed. "You're always digging where you don't belong, stirring up trouble. Don't you care that Dad might be hiding something from us?" Isabella shot back. "Of course I care, but this family has a reputation to uphold. If you go around airing our dirty laundry, it could ruin everything we've built," Eloise replied, her voice dripping with frustration. The argument left Isabella feeling isolated. Even her siblings, who she thought would stand by her, were more concerned with preserving their public image than uncovering the truth. As her frustration mounted, Isabella found an unexpected ally in an unlikely place: Mrs. Green, the family's long-serving housekeeper. Late one night, Mrs. Green approached Isabella in the library, carrying a small, tarnished key on a chain. "You're looking for answers, aren't you?" Mrs. Green asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How do you know that?" Isabella asked, startled. "I've worked here for decades," Mrs. Green said. "I've seen things I was told to keep quiet about. But your mother, she trusted me. She left this for you." Isabella took the key, her heart pounding. "What does it open?" Mrs. Green hesitated before answering. "That door you found in the West Wing. But be careful, child. The truth isn't always what you want it to be." Armed with the key, Isabella waited until the house was quiet before sneaking into the West Wing. The corridor felt even colder than before, the darkness pressing in around her. Her hands trembled as she inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into the basement. The air grew damp and musty as she descended, each step echoing ominously. At the bottom of the stairs, she found herself in a dimly lit room lined with shelves of old documents, photographs, and ledgers. In the center of the room stood a desk, its surface cluttered with papers. As she sifted through the documents, a chilling realization began to take shape. The ledgers detailed transactions involving land acquisitions, many of which were labeled with the names of families who had been forced off their properties. Isabella recognized the names from news articles about unfair evictions and lawsuits, cases her father had always dismissed as baseless accusations. One particular file caught her attention. It contained a series of letters between Arthur and a shady businessman discussing a deal that would displace an entire community to make way for one of his luxury developments. The final letter bore her father's signature, authorizing the deal. Isabella's chest tightened as the weight of the discovery sank in. Her father, the man she had always admired for his integrity, had built his empire on the suffering of others. The betrayal cut deep, and for a moment she felt as though the ground beneath her had crumbled. But her shock turned to anger when she found a photograph tucked beneath the letters. It was a picture of her mother, Charlotte, standing in the very room Isabella was now in. Scribbled on the back were the words, "The truth will set you free." "Mom knew," Isabella whispered, her voice trembling. "She knew all along." Her mother had tried to leave her a trail, but Arthur had silenced her. Whether through manipulation or coercion, Isabella didn't know. What she did know was that she couldn't keep this secret buried any longer. The next morning, Isabella confronted Arthur with the evidence she had found. The confrontation was explosive, with accusations and denials flying back and forth. "How could you do this?" Isabella shouted, throwing the documents onto the dining table. "You destroyed people's lives for money." Arthur's face was ashen as he stared at the papers. "You don't understand," he said weakly. "I did what I had to do to secure our family's future." "No, you did it for yourself," Isabella shot back. "Mom tried to stop you, didn't she? That's why she wrote about this in her journal." Arthur's silence was all the confirmation she needed. The man she had once seen as a pillar of strength now seemed small and broken, his carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of the truth. As the argument escalated, Andrew and Eloise entered the room, drawn by the commotion. When Isabella revealed the evidence, Andrew's face turned red with fury. "You knew about this, didn't you?" Isabella accused him. Andrew hesitated before nodding. "Dad told me it was just business," he said defensively. "I didn't know it was this bad." "You were complicit," Isabella shouted. "Both of you let this happen while pretending everything was fine." Eloise, who had always been the most image-conscious of the siblings, broke down in tears. "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I didn't want to know." The family was fractured, their once unshakable bond now splintered by betrayal and guilt. But as the dust settled, Isabella realized that the truth, no matter how painful, was a necessary step toward healing. In the days that followed, Isabella took it upon herself to make amends for her father's actions. She reached out to the families who had been wronged, offering reparations and public apologies. Her efforts were met with mixed reactions. Some accepted her sincerity, while others remained skeptical of her motives. Arthur, humbled by the ordeal, stepped down from his position as CEO, leaving Isabella to take the reins. Under her leadership, the company began to prioritize ethical practices and community engagement, working to rebuild the trust they had lost. Though the road to redemption was long and arduous, Isabella found solace in knowing that her mother's legacy had not been in vain. The hidden door, once a symbol of secrecy and betrayal, had become a portal to change, a reminder that even the darkest truths could lead to light. Climax. Isabella stood frozen, clutching the damning evidence in her hands as the realization of her father's betrayal weighed heavily on her. The hidden room she'd discovered wasn't just a dusty relic of the past. It was a testament to decades of unethical decisions, lies, and greed. The pristine image of Arthur Wellington, the celebrated billionaire and philanthropist, had shattered, leaving behind only the raw truth of a man who had sacrificed his integrity for wealth. Armed with the documents, Isabella stormed into the grand dining hall where her father sat reviewing paperwork. His usually calm demeanor faltered as he noticed her tense expression. "Isabella, what's wrong?" he asked, though his voice carried an undercurrent of unease. "What's wrong?" she repeated, her voice trembling with fury. "I found the room, Dad, the hidden door in the West Wing, and I found these." She threw the ledgers and letters onto the table, their incriminating contents spilling out in front of him. Arthur's face paled. "You shouldn't have gone in there," he said quietly, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "You lied to all of us," Isabella yelled, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "You built this entire empire on the suffering of others, families who lost everything because of you. And Mom, she knew, didn't she? That's why she tried to leave me clues." Arthur stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This isn't what you think," he said defensively. "I did what I had to do to protect this family." "Protect us?" Isabella scoffed. "You call displacing entire communities and ruining lives protection? You didn't protect us, Dad. You tainted everything we stand for." The commotion drew Andrew and Eloise into the room. Andrew, always the pragmatic one, eyed the documents with growing concern, while Eloise clung to the doorframe, her expression a mixture of confusion and dread. "What's going on?" Andrew demanded, his gaze darting between Isabella and their father. "I found out the truth," Isabella said, her voice sharp. "Dad's been hiding this from us for years. Everything we have, the mansion, the company, our so-called legacy, it's all built on lies." Andrew picked up one of the letters, his jaw tightening as he scanned its contents. "Is this true?" he asked Arthur, his voice low but filled with accusation. Arthur didn't respond immediately. His silence was answer enough. "Unbelievable," Andrew muttered, throwing the letter back onto the table. "You knew about this, didn't you?" he asked Eloise. I didn't want to believe it," Eloise stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I thought it was just rumors." "You thought wrong," Isabella said bitterly, "and now we all have to live with the consequences." As the argument reached a fever pitch, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Green, the housekeeper, entered the room hesitantly. "There's someone here to see you, Mr. Wellington," she said, her voice tight with nerves. "Tell them to come back later," Arthur snapped. "They insisted," Mrs. Green replied. "It's about the West Wing." The room fell silent as a man stepped into the dining hall. He was middle-aged, with a weathered face and a resolute demeanor. He introduced himself as Marcus Hale, a community leader representing one of the neighborhoods Arthur had displaced. "Mr. Wellington," Marcus began, his voice steady but firm, "I've waited a long time for this moment." Arthur's face hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," Marcus said, his gaze shifting to the documents on the table. "Those ledgers tell the story you've been trying to bury, but what they don't capture is the pain you caused. Families torn apart, homes destroyed, lives ruined." Isabella stepped forward, her voice filled with determination. "Mr. Hale, I'm so sorry for what my father did. I had no idea, but I promise you, I'm going to make this right." Arthur's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're not seriously taking his side, are you?" "I'm taking the side of justice," Isabella shot back. "Something you should have done a long time ago." The tension in the room reached its breaking point as Marcus detailed the extent of the damage Arthur had caused. Andrew tried to mediate, urging everyone to find a solution that doesn't destroy the family, while Eloise broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation. But Isabella refused to back down. "This isn't about us anymore," she said. "It's about the people we've hurt, the people Dad hurt. If we don't do something now, we're no better than him." Arthur's voice rose, filled with desperation. "You don't understand what it's like to carry the weight of this family. Every decision I made was for your benefit." "Don't you dare put this on us," Isabella replied, her voice shaking with anger. "We didn't ask for this. You had a choice, and you chose greed over integrity." As the argument continued, Andrew revealed a shocking secret of his own. He had known about Arthur's actions for years, but had kept quiet to protect the family's reputation. Isabella stared at him in disbelief. "You knew," she whispered, "and you let it happen." "I thought I was doing the right thing," Andrew said, his voice laced with guilt. I thought keeping it quiet would minimize the damage." "You were complicit," Marcus interjected. "By staying silent, you allowed this to continue." The betrayal cut deep, leaving Isabella feeling more alone than ever. But instead of giving in to despair, she channeled her anger into action. Isabella turned to Marcus. "What can I do to help?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil around her. Marcus hesitated before replying. "It won't be easy. The damage is done, but you can start by acknowledging it publicly. Take responsibility for your family's actions and make amends." Arthur scoffed. "You think a public apology will fix this? You'll destroy our legacy." "Our legacy is already destroyed," Isabella said. "But we can build something better, a legacy of accountability and redemption." With Marcus's guidance, Isabella drafted a statement admitting her father's wrongdoing and pledging to make reparations to the affected communities. She also announced plans to restructure the family business, prioritizing ethical practices and community engagement. The announcement sent shockwaves through the media, sparking both praise and criticism. Some lauded Isabella's courage, while others accused her of trying to salvage her family's image. Arthur, meanwhile, faced mounting pressure to step down as CEO. In a heated board meeting, Isabella confronted her father one last time. "You need to step aside," she said. "The company can't move forward with you at the helm." Arthur glared at her, his pride wounded. "And what makes you think you can do any better?" "Because I'm willing to learn from your mistakes," Isabella replied, "something you've never been able to do." Reluctantly, Arthur agreed to resign, leaving Isabella to take over as CEO. In the weeks that followed, Isabella worked tirelessly to implement the changes she had promised. She partnered with Marcus and other community leaders to provide restitution to those who had been wronged, and she established new policies to ensure the company operated with transparency and integrity. Though the journey was far from over, the transformative moment had set the stage for a brighter future, not just for the Wellington family, but for the people they had hurt along the way. The story of Isabella's discovery and her fight for justice became a symbol of hope, proving that even in the face of betrayal and adversity, redemption was possible. Resolution. The fallout from Isabella's bold actions reverberated far beyond the mansion's walls. The Wellington family, once revered for their wealth and influence, now stood as a public example of the complexities of accountability and redemption. For Isabella, however, this was only the beginning of a long journey to repair the damage her family had done. In the weeks following the announcement, the mansion that once symbolized the Wellingtons' grandeur became the epicenter of an intense reckoning. Arthur, stripped of his CEO title, retreated to his private study. The man who had always been larger than life seemed diminished, a shadow of his former self. Though still bitter about how things had unfolded, he began to confront the uncomfortable truths that Isabella's discovery had brought to light. One afternoon, Isabella found him sitting in the hidden room where it had all begun. The documents and artifacts that had exposed his corruption were now neatly filed in boxes, ready to be handed over to the authorities. "You were right," Arthur said quietly as she entered. His voice was heavy with regret. "I let ambition blind me. I forgot what truly mattered." "It's not too late to make things right," Isabella replied, her tone firm but not unkind. "But it has to start with you." Arthur nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. For the first time, he seemed willing to take responsibility for his actions. Together they discussed ways he could contribute to the restitution efforts, not as a wealthy benefactor, but as someone who needed to atone. Andrew and Eloise, too, were grappling with their roles in the family's downfall. Andrew, once so focused on maintaining appearances, channeled his guilt into action. He stepped up to assist Isabella with the day-to-day management of the company, leveraging his financial expertise to ensure their reparations fund was distributed effectively. Eloise, who had always avoided confrontation, found herself drawn to the personal stories of those affected by their father's actions. She began visiting the communities that had been displaced, listening to their struggles, and learning how the Wellingtons' resources could be used to help rebuild. For the first time, she felt a sense of purpose that went beyond the privileged bubble in which she had grown up. The siblings' newfound unity didn't come easily. Tensions flared, and old wounds resurfaced during heated arguments. But through these conflicts, they began to understand each other on a deeper level. Isabella's unwavering determination inspired her siblings to rise above their past mistakes and join her in creating a legacy rooted in integrity. Marcus Hale became a vital figure in the Wellingtons' redemption arc. With his deep connection to the affected communities, he served as both a mentor and a critic, ensuring the family's efforts were genuine and impactful. Together with Isabella, Marcus established the Wellington Foundation, an organization dedicated to rebuilding displaced neighborhoods and supporting small businesses that had been harmed by the family's previous ventures. The foundation's work wasn't limited to financial support. It also included workshops on ethical business practices, mentorship programs for young entrepreneurs, and initiatives to preserve local culture. Marcus often accompanied Isabella to public forums where they listened to community members' concerns and adapted their strategies accordingly. True redemption isn't just about saying you're sorry, Marcus said during one meeting. It's about putting in the work to make things better. His words became the guiding principle for the Foundation's efforts, ensuring that the Wellingtons' actions spoke louder than their apologies. For Isabella, the journey was both exhausting and transformative. As the new CEO of Wellington Industries, she faced relentless scrutiny from the media and skepticism from business leaders. Critics questioned her ability to lead, citing her lack of experience and the shadow of her father's misdeeds. But Isabella remained steadfast, using every challenge as an opportunity to prove her commitment to change. Her leadership style was a stark contrast to her father's. While Arthur had ruled with an iron fist, Isabella fostered collaboration and transparency. She held regular meetings with employees at all levels of the company, encouraging them to voice their ideas and concerns. Over time, this approach began to rebuild trust within the organization. Isabella's personal life also underwent a transformation. The burden of her family's legacy had once isolated her, but now it connected her to a larger purpose. She found solace in her work, knowing that every step forward brought her closer to making a meaningful difference. The Wellingtons' efforts began to yield tangible results. In one of the displaced neighborhoods, a small bakery reopened with funding from the foundation. The owner, a single mother named Rosa, had nearly given up hope after losing her shop to one of Arthur's land acquisitions. But with Isabella's support, Rosa not only rebuilt her business, but also hired several local teens, giving them a safe space to learn and grow. At the bakery's grand reopening, Rosa presented Isabella with a loaf of bread, baked using a family recipe passed down for generations. "This isn't just bread," Rosa said, her voice filled with emotion. "It's a symbol of resilience, and now it's part of your family's story too." Isabella was deeply moved by the gesture, realizing that the Wellingtons' redemption was as much about healing others as it was about healing themselves. Back at the mansion, changes were also underway. Isabella decided to open the hidden room to the public, turning it into a small museum that documented the family's history, the good, the bad, and the transformative. The exhibit included the incriminating documents, along with stories of the people who had been affected by Arthur's actions. Visitors were encouraged to reflect on the lessons of accountability and redemption, and proceeds from the museum were donated to the Wellington Foundation. The initiative drew both praise and criticism, but for Isabella, it was a way to confront the past head-on rather than bury it. The story of the Wellingtons served as a powerful reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition and the importance of ethical decision-making. Isabella often spoke about the lessons she had learned, emphasizing that wealth and power should be used as tools for good rather than as ends in themselves. During a speech at a university commencement ceremony, she shared her vision for the future. "Mistakes don't define us," she said. "What defines us is how we choose to address those mistakes and what we do to ensure they're not repeated." Her words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom had followed her journey through the media. Isabella's story became a source of inspiration for those striving to navigate their own challenges with integrity and courage. As the years passed, the Wellingtons' transformation continued to unfold. The foundation grew, expanding its reach to include environmental initiatives and educational programs. Marcus Hale became a trusted advisor to Isabella, while Andrew and Eloise found their own ways to contribute, using their unique talents to support the family's mission. Arthur, though no longer at the helm, found a sense of peace in his later years. He volunteered at the Foundation's community centers, sharing his story as a cautionary tale and encouraging others to prioritize values over ambition. The mansion, once a symbol of secrecy and greed, became a hub of activity and hope. Its halls echoed with laughter and conversation as community events brought people together. For Isabella, the sight of the once hidden door, now a prominent feature of the museum, served as a reminder of how far they had come. On the anniversary of her mother's death, Isabella stood in the mansion's garden, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the legacy her family was building, not one of wealth or power, but one of accountability, resilience, and hope. As the sun set over the estate, casting a golden glow across the landscape, Isabella felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. The journey had been painful and fraught with challenges, but it had also been transformative, and in the end, it had shown her that even in the darkest of times, there was always a path toward redemption. The story of the Wellingtons became more than just a cautionary tale. It became a testament to the power of change and the enduring strength of the human spirit.